Welcome back, everyone, to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. I'm your host, Matt Betts, and we're excited to be joined today by someone that's, I feel like, has been in every position in baseball. She's been a player, she's been in a front office, she's now on TV. Liz Benn. Liz, how's it going?
Great. How are you doing? It's nice to be, having a Canadian conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we do here. So I'm excited to have you on. But such a vast background you have, and we want to get into it all. But I guess to start, just give us a kind of a background on yourself and how you first were introduced to the game, and a little bit about your career to date.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say it's my family that introduced me to it. My mom is from New Jersey, so she was kind of raised a Yankee fan, and it was just kind of a natural part of the upbringing. My dad's Canadian, and he does not care about baseball. He's very supportive, and when I was with the Mets, he would take a look at the score of the game and everything to make sure we were doing okay. But aside from that, most of the baseball came from my mom and my older brother. So I think one of the first stories is that I was born in September '93, and apparently I had one of my kind of first smiles when Joe Carter hit the home run. So I think it was just in there naturally too. But I ended up playing baseball pretty much my whole life. Growing up, I still play a little bit now in New York. But I volunteered with the Blue Jays at the Jays Care Foundation when I was at University of Toronto. And that, I guess, was kind of my entry into working in baseball, even though I didn't really realize at the time that it could be a full career. So I did that for a while, then moved to New York and was coaching baseball and softball. And then through that, and also some of the folks at Jays Care, they're like, hey, you should talk to people at MLB and see if there's maybe a fit there. And I thought they were nuts. I was in New York doing a philosophy master's degree, and so I didn't think that was the path that baseball usually looks for in a candidate. But I ended up getting an internship at MLB, and then things kind of flowed from there to 5 years at the Commissioner's office, 3 years at the Mets, and then in the past year, really exploring a ton of different areas, including TV, like you mentioned.
Commissioner's office. First of all, I want to go back to your mom's a Yankees fan, and you were born when Joe Carter hit that home run. Was that did that hurt your mom a little bit to watch that and see your first smile?
It seems like she's converted to a Jays fan, just being in Toronto for so long at this point. So no, pretty excited about it. But I was lucky to grow up learning baseball through the '90s and early 2000 Yankees in their dynasty years. So I think that it was a pretty nice introduction. Although at the same time, I was one of the people who was at the Jays games when they were having record low attendances, for example. So really, I feel like the two teams kind of collectively raised me.
Yeah, I remember the first John Gibbons era, the Troy Gloss and all those guys. So yeah, that's kind of was when I was born in 1992. But back to the Commissioner's office. What role were you doing there, and what was that like? What goes on in the Commissioner's office? Pull the curtain back for us.
Yeah, it's a busy place. Anything that happens in baseball, from what you actually see on the field to the marketing and sponsorship to community initiatives, everything is going on in there. It's a very busy place with a lot of people and departments. So I went in there as an intern in youth programs to start off. So initially it was because they were thinking of starting girls baseball initiatives. They had just launched Trailblazer Series that year. And I have been a female baseball player my whole life. So I think there was kind of hey, there's somebody who knows what this atmosphere looks like, which they didn't have at the time. So started as an intern in youth programs and spent a summer doing that. And then I presented a paper at the Baseball Hall of Fame at their annual conference about girls and women in baseball. And that kind of caught the attention of some different people at the Commissioner's office too. So because of that and kind of expanding that network at the office a bit, I transitioned to an internship in labor relations, of all things. Worked on some player programs, player education, also a grievance between a player and a team. So kind of got exposed to a bunch of different areas. And then through that, I got hired into a full-time role where I really had three responsibilities. So one was baseball operations, and really it turned into being involved in approving the transactions that all 30 teams would submit every day, scrutinizing over injured list placements, things like that. Also helping with background checks and stuff on potential draft players. So anything that was kind of in baseball operations, ad hoc tasks, and also that major league roster management side, that was my main day job. But then I also worked on professional development for women interested in baseball ops and on-field roles specifically, like coaches, and then also developing the girls baseball development program. So 3 very different areas, but it was fun to get to explore a bunch of different things there.
How important was that to get all that different experience? Like, you seem like you were all over the place. Labor relations as well. We might have to have you back on after the season with the
Yeah.
right. But how important was it to get those different experiences? And how did that kind of help you in your career going forward?
Yeah, I don't think I fully realized the value when it was taking place, but afterwards I really did. It was just being able to be involved in so many different areas. I got a very well-rounded perspective on what goes on there. So even if I wasn't involved in like the actual negotiating table, for example, like the last CBA, I kind of knew what was going on, and I knew how it would impact the teams, how it would impact the players, and what kind of some of the negotiation strategies would be. And so then when I ended up moving to the Mets, for example, I kind of had that different perspective. So that was great. I think also just, I'm sure we'll talk about the Mets role, but that was really something where I was working in anything that could have touched the major league team, I had my hand in. And so I think that when I was at the commissioner's office and essentially like 3 different roles at the same time, I learned how to kind of balance and prioritize different areas of my job.
Great segue. We're going to go to the Mets now. You worked your way. You were eventually named director of Major League Operations. Was that the correct title? Right. And it was the highest ranking position a woman's ever held in their organization. I think that still stands.
So Catherine Crimmins, I believe she's a senior director now. She came in my second year there, and I think that she's a senior director of, I think, baseball initiatives is the title.
Well, you had it first. We'll stick with that. How did that opportunity for the Mets come along? I'm assuming through some of your work with the commissioner's office, and kind of what made that the right decision to jump in with an organization as opposed to the league.
Yeah, it was not the plan. I would have been happy staying at the commissioner's office forever. It was a really hard decision to leave, but because I was doing that work in the transactions and the roster management, it meant that I learned the rules, regulations, CBA very, very well. And normally you learn transactions if you're with a team because you're doing your transactions every day. I got to see all 30 teams transactions every day. And so you essentially get like 30 seasons worth of knowledge and experience in one. So I learned that stuff pretty well. And then when Billy Epler became the general manager of the Mets, I got a call from him and he was like, hey, people keep bringing up your name as kind of this person that I should talk to about someone who knows the rules and that roster management stuff really well. What do you think of that? And so I was a little bit taken aback, honestly, because I had not planned on moving to a team. But when I talked to him about the role and what was involved in it, I was like, this sounds like so much fun. And I was just thinking like, wait, this is being with a team. And it kind of like clicked with me like, hey, I'd have a voice in building a roster to compete for a championship. So the fact that it seemed like a really cool opportunity, a good career jump, good career move. I had a specific skill set that he saw value in, and that's why he was seeking me out. And then honestly, because it was staying in New York, it was pretty convenient. I didn't have to kind of uproot my whole life for that job. I could just kind of take the subway in the other direction. So everything kind of fit together really, really well and conveniently for me to make that move.
Director of Major League Operations. You always hear these titles within front offices, but what does that position specifically entail?
Yeah, it's hard to describe, and even 4 years after getting it, it's really hard to actually explain what it is. But the core of it is managing the major league roster, and so that is writing up and signing all the contracts for the players. It is being involved in the strategic roster decisions, so trades, free agent signings, waiver claims, who's being sent up and down every day. Making sure that injured list placements are all set, making sure that players who are rehabbing are all set, and that involves sending them around the country for different rehab outings. But then also things like planning spring training, working with the coaches, menial tasks at times too. Like if the hitting coach, we had Eric Chavez for my years there, if he says, hey, we need a mirror in the batting cage for some drills, I need to figure out how to order a mirror and get a mirror into the batting cage that's on wheels that could wheel around. So really anything top to bottom of negotiating an arbitration case with a player's agent to ordering that mirror to helping a guy out with traveling when he's been first called up to the team.
Everybody thinks about front offices. Everyone wants to think what they would do in a front office. Did anything surprise you when getting there about how at least the Mets operate their front office?
Yeah, I think what was really cool for me to just see was how good everybody was at what they did. So because it's pretty quick, like fast paced, like every day you're making a decision about the roster and the team that day. You have to be able to make really good decisions very quickly. And I was really impressed to see how everybody was truly the master at their area of expertise and was just so good at it. So it's cool to be in that environment where everybody you're working with is so good at their job. Not saying that like the commissioner's office isn't. There's just like a different level of like urgency. Everybody at the commissioner's office is great too. It's just a different level of urgency. So that was really cool. But I think that one thing that I realized when I got to spring training that kind of shocked me, and it shouldn't have, but it did, is that it's still just baseball and it's the same game that you've always experienced. It's just faster, stronger, there's more data behind it. But day one of spring training, like they're doing PFPs, they're doing basic cutoff plays, they're making the same mistakes that you'll see maybe a little league team make at times just because they need to be refreshed on it. So it's the same game, and that kind of shocked me, honestly.
Yeah, I always love seeing the clips or being at spring training and seeing them doing base running or PFPs, and it's like that's the same stuff they're doing. 12-year-olds are doing on the fields in Oklahoma. But what did you have like a project or something that you worked on in the Mets front office that you'll kind of remember? Was there something, a player that you interacted with, an experience that you had that kind of sticks with you?
There's a lot. I think that one really cool thing was that my first year there, we clinched a wild card spot in Milwaukee, and I was on that road trip. And we didn't do like the whole like big popping champagne celebration. We did kind of a modest toast, pretty much. But just having all the guys on the team to like treat me as part of the team, that was really cool. And we got to that kind of state in that kind of community pretty quickly. I think that going into it too, you get a lot of questions about like, oh, like you're the woman in there, like, how is that going to go? The players never questioned that. They're like, you're here for a reason. And so you're very much part of the team pretty quickly. So that was cool. But also say there's just like moments too where you still get kind of the like the magic of it being baseball. Like at one point a ball like rolled over to me on the field when I was checking something, and then somebody like whistled for me to like throw it back, and it was like Albert Pujols, and I was like, I just threw baseball to Albert Pujols. Like that's pretty cool. I had Buck Showalter as a manager for the first 2 years, and I worked with him every single day, and getting to have like pick Buck Showalter's brain is like one of the coolest things ever. So you still get those magical moments that are pretty cool too.
What's it like doing it in New York? Obviously, it's a huge market. Mets and Yankees both have lots of scrutiny, lots of criticism that comes along with it. How does the organization kind of handle that? And yeah, what's the key to kind of working around that, not letting it impact your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I probably can't answer it fully because I only worked at the commissioner's office and the Mets, and so it was two very big places in New York. So I've kind of only been on like that kind of big stage. But there's just an expectation that you will win and be the best. But also that's how I like to work generally anyway. Like I don't think I would do great with a team that was kind of okay with like finishing third or fourth in the division. It's just like not really how I work. On a practical note though, I mean, you do, when you're thinking of signing a guy or making a trade or something, you need to do that digging into how will they deal with New York. Will they be able to kind of take the pressure? And even last week we saw the fans were already booing Bo Bichette because he's off to a bit of a slow start. So Bo's handling it great. I don't think all players would. And so being able to do that background information prior to signing a player is kind of a practical way that being in New York is quite different from being somewhere else.
Yeah, you get to people like me talking about 6 games in. It's like you got to keep in mind, it's been 20 at bats, or 24 at bats, or whatever it's been. I think you'll be okay, but
you'll be totally fine.
Yeah. So jumping to what you're doing now you've jumped into the TV side. You're the MLB analyst for TSN. You're working at SNY in New York. So take me through how you made that transition from the Mets to TV now.
Yeah, I didn't really expect to do TV. When I was at University of Toronto, I was a sports editor of the Varsity, the newspaper, for a while, and I thought I wanted to do sports journalism. I think probably because that's the kind of entryway into sports that I saw for myself. I didn't really know that working for a team or the commissioner's office was a real thing that I could do. I actually remember one summer I was reaching out to all the different Toronto sports networks to see if anybody had an internship opportunity, and somebody actually responded to me and said, well, you should really look into broadcast. And at the time I thought, no, I only want to do writing. I do not want to touch broadcast. That's crazy. Why would I ever do that? And now 10, 11 years later, so that's exactly what I'm doing. So it was probably there the whole time. But when I was at the Mets, I was around the media quite a bit. just kind of being on the field, like they're there during BP and everything. So I kind of learned a little bit about it through them. And then when I kind of saw that I was probably not going to continue with the Mets after the 24th season, I really just wanted to learn other areas of the industry. I thought, maybe I go to a team right away and just try a different environment, or maybe I explore a different area of the industry. And I was lucky that when I contacted some friends at SNY, they were like, yeah, well, of course you can be on and talk about the Mets. So did that, and it's been so much more fun than I expected it to be. So I just really enjoyed it. Then this year, I'm pretty excited that I get to talk about my hometown team with TSN as well.
So I watched your I think it was your first segment, and when you were talking about Ernie Clement.
Yes.
But SNY, what specifically are you doing there? I'm assuming you're doing kind of some of those like hit pieces, like those pieces on TSN that analysts do, like popping on in and out of the broadcast. But what are you doing at SNY? Is it more consistent with the Mets, or how is that going to work?
It's been panel shows mostly. So during the season, there's one that I do, Baseball Night in New York, and it's mostly Mets, but some Yankees talk as well, which also is fun for me given the Yankee fan background. And so those are panel shows where I think that they do a great job at kind of leveraging everybody's area of expertise. And so when I'm on, it's a lot of questions about, hey, how would a front office view this? I've been on with Jose Reyes before, and it's, hey, how do the players see this? So it's kind of any kind of discussion about Mets. And then this offseason, I also did a show called The Hot Stove, which went over all the free agency and trades and all that stuff. So a little different. My first time doing something at TSN, it was kind of surprising like how different it felt, because it was kind of standing at the desk and doing something with Sarah prompting me, but doing most of it alone and not kind of like bouncing ideas off of somebody like you do on a panel. So another challenge and another thing to learn, but yeah, it'll get better with time.
Were you nervous the first time you did it, kind of in front of the camera, or did it just come naturally once you start talking baseball?
At SNY, I think a little bit, just because it's such a new environment for me. Like, I'm used to talking about baseball in a front office kind of boardroom or in the clubhouse or something, where you're not kind of emoting or anything. You're just kind of talking about it. And then on TV, my biggest feedback kept being more energy, more energy, more energy. But that is not how I'm used to talking about baseball. So there's kind of this performing aspect to it that is very new to me. And somebody will say, look at camera 2, and I'll ask, what is camera 2? I don't know what that is. Or the actual term for an earpiece, I just have called it an earpiece. When somebody asked me if I wanted it, I just gave them a blank stare. So it's a very new environment for me. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But when I'm actually preparing the baseball stuff, that feels more at home for me. I feel a bit more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure that, guys, relax. We got 162 games here. We don't need more energy. We got to conserve a little bit of energy here. Exactly. We're going to hit the dog days at some point. But yeah, so you also have another first that I researched, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the first woman to pitch in the New York City Metro Baseball League. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, you played softball at the University of Toronto. Yeah. So how did you get into the New York City Metro League? How did that happen?
So I think the bigger thing is that I never played softball until I got to the University of Toronto. I always played baseball. So the first softball game I actually ever saw, I was standing at first base, absolutely terrified of the fact that I was so close to the batter. So the softball was really fun, but totally new environment for me. When I moved to New York, I emailed every local baseball league in the area saying, hey, I play baseball, I'm a pitcher, I'd like to keep playing. And only 2 of them got back to me. One of them was a bit too far away, and then the Metro League got back to me with, I think it was a canned email, because it started off "Dear Gentleman," and then had tryout information. But I thought, well, there's tryout information, so let me show up and see what happens. So I tried out, and there was a couple opportunities with a few teams to play. So I've been doing that for, I can't believe it's like 9 years now. That seems crazy to me, but it's just fun to keep playing and trying new things out. And honestly, I think that it allowed some of the players I work with have more respect for me too, just because I'm not doing it anywhere near their level, but I have stood on a mound and pitched before, which not everybody in a front office can say.
So with your background, I'm guessing you're going to assume I'm going to ask this question. Give me the scouting report on Liz Benn on the mound.
Well, I'm 2 shoulder surgeries deep, so we'll just skip over the velocity question. We'll just skip that one, but command is really good. And my stuff moves well. So I have a kind of slurve and a slider, and they play pretty well off of each other. So it's just fun to try out different things and pitch mixes and see how I can fool guys.
I appreciate you keeping it simple, not picking in spin rate and all that kind of stuff. So we'll keep it.
We don't need to talk about that.
Do you see yourself as kind of a voice for women in the game, especially Canadian women, and kind of, I don't want to say like breaking barriers because there's lots of women in the game, but kind of given how successful you've been, do you see yourself kind of as a role model almost? I know a lot of people don't think of themselves like that, but
yeah, thanks for saying that. It's tough to answer because I think that kind of title or that role is kind of naturally placed on a lot of us who are in the game. And we don't ever ask for it. We don't necessarily want it, but just because you are the only one in the room for the most part, it kind of just naturally arises. And then I think when it's hit me more has been when like the girls, now women in college or even beyond, who I worked with through MLB, when they're now asking me, hey, how do I work in baseball? And how do I do what you do? That's when it kind of hits me a bit more, is that, oh, wow, like people actually have been kind of watching what I've done and have seen a role for themselves in it. So it's kind of overwhelming when that happens. And I feel like I don't fully know how to feel about it. But I do think that any woman working in baseball, it's kind of placed on you without you asking for it to be placed on you.
Have you seen women's opportunities progress in your career from when you started to now? Like now I go into a clubhouse and there's one, like it's just normal. But like when you first started, was that the way it was? And have you seen any progression in that?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit. So even when I started at MLB and we started to talk about, okay, what about a woman coach? Crazy idea. There had been one woman who had coached at Instructional League for a little bit, but that was it in the history of baseball. And so when we're just like, can we get somebody in there? It just seemed like this crazy concept, and people were like, why would you, who would you even get for that? Who's qualified to do that? And then I think because we created a few different programs, like the Take the Field program, it presented just like really high quality candidates to the clubs. And so then clubs were thinking, oh, like you're handing us good candidates for these jobs, who are people who are super qualified, who are eager to do it, who are eager to take a position that's maybe challenging. So staying at the complex in Florida for an entire summer, that's not an easy position to do. And so through that, there have now been, I think, over 10 women who have coached minor league baseball, and that's just since 2018. So there's been a huge progression there. At every team, there are women working now, and that was not the case when I started. I think that at this point, there's a ton of women in entry-level jobs. I would like to see more getting senior leadership jobs, because that is still an area where there aren't a ton. There's progress happening, but there needs to be more kind of a pipeline from those entry-level jobs up higher into the front offices.
Why do you think that pipeline doesn't, not that it doesn't exist, but why do you think that's such a struggle? It seems you're making it sound like there's a lot of entry level, but not a lot of like movement up the chain, so to speak. How do you go about fixing that? I mean, to me, it just seems so normal now to see women in the game, like, but going back 20 years, like that wasn't necessarily the case. So I think that's why we're having this conversation.
Right. I think one, like there are so few positions at higher levels. So for example, like when I left the Mets, people were asking, oh, are you just going to, be director of Major League Ops at a different team? There's 30 teams and they all have somebody in that position. So like, no, I can't, because there's only 30 jobs and there's no opening. So there aren't many jobs there. I think just as long as teams are kind of putting effort into developing the talent that is at the entry level and giving them more opportunities to grow and learn, that investment needs to be made in them. But then also just it sounds really simple, but like women and just diversity generally, they have to actually be genuinely considered for those roles. And I don't think they always are. You see a lot of movement between teams, for example, and generally that's happening because somebody has worked with somebody else, or somebody has played college baseball with somebody else, so knows a guy here. And so because women typically come from a different path, or they're not playing college baseball for the most part, or professional baseball for the most part, those kind of natural connections don't really exist. And so there has to be more of a concerted effort to actually bringing in those women to be considered for those positions.
Yeah, I think in Canada too, there's no better example than the women's national team, Baseball Canada. They have an outstanding national team, and now the Women's Professional Baseball League is going to be launching in July, I believe. Have you heard that? August? Okay, I was 1 month off. I apologize.
Right there.
Have you had any involvement in that, or just kind of what are your general thoughts on now with the success of the PWHL in hockey and now baseball league? What's your thoughts on that league, and what would you like to see out of it?
Yeah, so I've helped out a bit. So I helped out last summer with the tryouts, which was really cool. I mean, there was 600 players who showed up from I think 12 different countries. I remember talking about it with the owner of the league at the start, and I was like, I don't know, I could probably guarantee you like 80 players, and then 600 showed up. So that was pretty exciting, and kind of I think was opened a lot of eyes, including my own, to kind of the talent and interested globally in this league. And then I also helped out with the draft. And then most recently, I was in Fort Myers, Florida, with kind of an exhibition game showcase type event with some of the players. It's about time that women's baseball has an opportunity like this. The World Cup is fantastic, but it's once every 3 years. There are qualifiers for it. Those are once every 2 years or so. So there just aren't that many opportunities for women to play. And I think one of the biggest things holding women's baseball back is just the lack of opportunities, and at the younger levels, lack of development or like high quality development for players. So it'll be fantastic. I mean, the players are excited, coaches are excited, like everybody's so thrilled about this league because it's finally giving a regular playing opportunity to the elite players around the world.
Yeah, and tons of Canadians were drafted.
Yeah, I think we have 20 Canadians.
How many?
20, I believe.
I was going to say more than I can even name off the top of my head. Yeah, but I guess jumping back to the Major League Baseball side of it, you mentioned Bo Bichette, obviously being a Blue Jay, and then signs with the Mets. Take us through a little bit. Obviously, you weren't there for that negotiation or that signing, but take us a little bit about what goes on in the front office when a signing of that magnitude kind of goes down. What are the moving parts that need to kind of be checked off?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a very long process, and it's often many years long. I mean, people were probably looking at Bichette in that front office for a couple of years, not just when free agency hit this year. So my role in those signing processes was typically figuring out contract analysis. So what is the actual value of the player? What could a potential contract look like? And then I would outline a whole bunch of different versions. So for example, we keep hearing about the Dodgers and deferred compensation, but at the Mets, we were doing deferred compensation with players before I even got there. So we'll figure out different contract structures that could work, and then kind of the opening offers for a player that you'll bring to the agent, and then kind of what the top will be. So there's all that background information. But aside from that, like you need to tell the player why they should want to be with your team. And so other things that go into that are, I know Bo, he just got married. I don't believe he has a kid yet, but like somebody who has a kid, it's like, hey, the Mets have this state-of-the-art family room. With somebody who is there every day. They do activities for the kids. It's like the kid's favorite place in the entire world is this family room. And so a player who's coming in who has kids and that's something that's top of mind, like that's going to help them understand that. So there's little things off field like that, but then on field too, what I wish I could have seen in the Bichette negotiations was what were people promising in terms of playing time at different positions. I'm sure he would have loved to stay at shortstop, but Francisco Lindor is a shortstop in New York and you're not going to take his place. So what was the conversation like there to say, hey, you'll be our third baseman? And then what did other teams promise too? Like, was there a team who said, hey, we can put you at shortstop every day? Was there a team who said maybe second base? So those kinds of things are interesting too, and understanding the players' priorities, what they want their role to be on the team, that will kind of dictate a lot of the negotiation as well.
It's interesting you say kind of like the off-field stuff, like the family room, because the Jays have gotten a lot of praise for that kind of thing, and the family atmosphere they create, and a lot of their facilities they've done a lot in. So that does play a major part in it, is what you're saying.
It really does, and I think that people don't fully appreciate how much of a role that plays. And is there somebody in the front office dedicated to helping with travel and finding housing, for example? Because it's so obviously it's important for the player because it's just their real life and they need their family to be taken care of. But also as an organization, making that investment in the right personnel and those kinds of resources is really helpful because then it allows the player to stop thinking about that because it's taken care of, and then they can spend more time thinking about the baseball game. So it really is worth making that investment.
What are your thoughts on the 2026 Toronto Blue Jays?
I'm so excited for them. I think it's such a good team. So, I mean, when the front office was saying that they wanted to really strengthen the starting pitching in the rotation, and then they went out and did that it's hard to set a priority and like actually achieve it because it's so hard to actually go about free agency or to actually execute a trade. I mean, trades, I would say 95% of them, if not more, don't get executed after being brought up. So they did a really good job with that. The bullpen is very strong. the batting order, or just like the lineup generally, I think they did something so unique last year by having so many bat to ball guys with power sprinkled in with like Vladdies and guys like that. It's just such a unique approach compared to the rest of the league at this point. And clearly it worked last year. So I'm really excited to see how that happens again this year, if it can happen again, and also how teams are going to try to attack that. But right now, they haven't been able to. I mean, Ernie Clement is still just like smacking the ball all over the field wherever it's pitched. So yeah, it's a really good team. It might even be a better team than last year, I think.
How do you go about, and I'm making you do the job of an entire front office, but how do you go about projecting some of this when you get so many guys like Nathan Lucas, Madison Barger, and Ernie Clement, they all have what people are saying are career years. How do you go about projecting that into a new season? And does that make you nervous at all that, hey, maybe that won't happen?
Yeah, so I think this is where analytics comes into play, and I don't think that people really understand truly what analytics means in a front office. It doesn't just mean like extra stats. But it means figuring out, okay, this player maybe is, even if we just isolate, okay, he's really hitting an outside slider really well and he never did before. Why is he doing that? And so then you look at all the data, you look at the metrics, you look at the biomechanics, all of that, and figure out, why is this working and how can we get it to keep working without sacrificing something else? And so that's a big part of it. But the projections, it's these insane models that are kind of written up by the analytics groups. I have no idea how they do it or how it works. I just know that I got the pretty number at the end and was able to make decisions based off of that. But you generally can project pretty well based on past performance and kind of future growth. It's tough when it's somebody who doesn't have that much playing experience. So for example, like Trey Savage, it's tougher to project him because you just don't have as much of a sample to base it off of. But say like Max Scherzer, the Jays are probably pretty sure what they're going to get out of him this year. But that's, one area of projection. And just because I'm on my analytics kind of soapbox right now, another really important way that teams use analytics that I think is maybe overlooked by fans just because it's not talked about that much is the in-game matchup projections. So sometimes you'll see like the outfielders like looking at the cards or something. That is completely based on like, who is that pitcher? What does he throw? What does he throw against that hitter? What does that hitter typically do? It's all up to date as recent as the previous series. And so where exactly should that outfielder stand based on that matchup? Or if there's a relief pitcher coming in, who should we have pinch hit for Barger or somebody who's going to have the best chance of success? So analytics can also really assist with that in-game decision making.
How do you go about understanding and I don't want to say game planning, but something like George Springer 2 years ago, terrible season, just out of nowhere, comes back in that last year and had one of his best seasons. Jose Barrios did it too. He had a terrible year a couple years ago. Yusei Kikuchi. The Jays have had a couple of these guys. How do you go about as a front office kind of analyzing that data and understanding what you have season to season?
Yeah, that's kind of the tougher one where it doesn't match the projection. So first you just have to figure out why that is, and that it should be a conversation between the coaching staff and the analytics department. It should never be kind of one side making all the decisions. So maybe with one of the players, there was something going on off the field that affected them. I think that people think that's a oversimplification of things, but it's a real reason. I mean, if you're having a tough time with something, or I'm moving apartments and that's distracting me a bit and making me not as good as at my regular job right now. Same thing for baseball players. That's the regular job. So you'll take a look at those types of things. You'll also look at, for a pitcher, for example, has anything changed with their grip or their biomechanics that have led to a change? Even like if you look at Edwin Diaz pre WBC injury and post, his leg lift is a lot shorter. So is that actually going to affect any of his pitches? So anything like that, you can kind of identify through either the coaching, video, or analytical research.
How much impact do front offices, do you think, and based on your experience, have on-field decision making? We saw it with the Jays a couple of years ago in that series with Minnesota in the playoffs, the wild card series. But I kind of want to ask you, someone that's been in it, is it something that they're day-to-day they're kind of involved in, or is it mostly hands-off?
It depends on the team and it depends on the staff and the manager. So like I'll give you the example of when I was working with Buck Showalter. He wanted to take in every single piece of information, and then he figured out the best way to deploy it with decision making on field. And so sometimes that meant, okay, on the card it says that this guy is the best pinch hitter in this case against this relief pitcher, and other points it's like, hey, that guy's off today. Again, maybe to oversimplify it. So like that is not the best decision, even if everything says that it should be. So I really liked Buck's approach. I thought it was really effective of just taking in all the information, having it all at your disposal, and then making the decision that is best in that moment. I think one thing that's really tough, and where I think managers get a lot of criticism, is in the postseason. All these projections are made over a 162 game season. And so then all of a sudden you're in like a 3-game wildcard series and you have to make decisions, and the projections don't do well with like such a small sample size. Somebody can be hot or cold, and analytics don't like those trends of hot or cold. So that's when it gets a lot tougher, is when you can't really expand it out to an entire season and you have to do something in a much smaller sample size.
Thank you for saying that, because if you go on social media, you would think everyone's in everyone's back pocket all the time, and everyone has their opinion. But thank you for kind of clarifying how it kind of works and from your experience. I guess my last question is, where do you see yourself going in the game? I know you're in TV right now. Is getting back into a front office maybe a possibility? Is that something you'd look to do, or are you kind of just taking it as it comes?
Possibly. I think, it's really fun competing for a championship. I absolutely love doing that. It was pretty amazing getting to do that. But I think my entire career has just kind of flowed in different directions, and none of it has been planned at all. I didn't think that working at the commissioner's office was an option for me until I was actually in the building. I did not think I was going to go to the Mets. I did not think I was going to do TV. So everything just kind of flowed. So it's kind of hard to plan, which is tough for me too, because I'm very much a planner and a organization person. But it's just kind of flowed. So we'll see what happens next. But I'm really enjoying the TV stuff now, and the Women's Baseball League, and I did some consulting for an agency this year for their arbitration case. And so it's just been really fun to kind of experiment in different areas and see what's out there. So I have no idea what's next, and that is my genuine answer. That is not a public PR answer.
Liz, this was a lot of fun. We're looking forward to seeing you on TSN more regularly. And now we're going to have to check out some Mets broadcasts as well, some Mets coverage. But we really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much. This has been fun, and it's fun to talk about. I'll honestly say too, it's fun to talk about baseball and not just not only the gender part, which is often the conversation. So thank you for the great conversation.
Awesome.